What's up, everybody? Week 6 is already upon us here in the high school football season. Gazette Sports Editor Eric Schmolt here with reporter John Barry. We're here, looks like the future of Parkview and Broadhead Judah football behind us, getting ready for a little JV or
home of the Cardinals,
game.
The football program with the longest consecutive postseason streak in the state at, I believe it's 21. So a lot of good football been played on that field behind us by the Cardinals in the last 20 years or so.
It looks like 22 is pretty much in the cards, so to speak.
Yeah. Cardinals rolling along, and certainly I think the consensus coming into the year that they would have a chance to have a good season, and they backed it up with a 5-0 start.
Yeah. Well, we thought we've just reached the halfway point, or crossed it last week with week 5, and since we're here at Broadhead High School, and they probably still hand out midterm grades, I assume.
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure those are things you don't like to remember based on your past.
I don't want to talk about midterms, no.
But we thought we'd hand out some midterm grades across our coverage area here, and what we've seen over the first 5 weeks and what we need to see in the next 4 before the playoffs arrive. So I thought we'd start east and work our way west this way. So
sounds good.
In the lakes.
East that way, okay, all right.
We'll go east to west. We'll go east to west. Right. I thought we'd start in the lakes. We got Delavan Darien, Elkhorn, and Lake Geneva Badger in our coverage area. And to me, those are 3 teams that maybe all get the same grade at this point. They've each had some decent wins. They've each had some head-scratching games or some head-scratching stats that have kind of made it hard to figure out. But, you know, assess maybe, do you see any one of those 3 that are maybe ahead of the class?
Well, I think I would grade Elkhorn maybe a step above the other 2, maybe a B for the Elks and a B minus for the Badgers and for the Comets, simply because, you know, Elkhorn beat Delavan in week 4, so a good win there. But certainly all 3 of those teams, you know, in the playoff hunt, and in week 6, that's all you can ask for. Elkhorn with a huge game this week at Waterford. Waterford, the 3-time defending conference champion, and a huge game for the Elks, and maybe find out if they're, you know, if we can believe, so to speak, what we've seen from them thus far, if it's just kind of been a mirage and they fall back into mediocrity. So hopefully the Elks can go into Waterford this week, get back on the winning track. A little hiccup last week with a loss, but the Elks defensively are going to be in every game. And when you look at Badger and Delavan, 2 teams that kind of been up and down a little bit.
Both moving kind of in separate directions
exactly.
here. Badger's kind of got a little win streak going. They'll put it up against the Comets, who have lost 2 in a row after a nice start for them. So we'll kind of get a chance to see where those 2 teams stand when they face each other. But yeah, I think, like you said, they're all kind of right there.
Yep.
B minus. It kind of depends on the night range. But
yep.
The entire Southern Lakes is an I right now for incomplete, because there's nobody that's really stepped to the forefront there.
Gone forward, and no one's really taken a big step back. I think everybody's in the playoff hunt, and week 6, I guess that's kind of the norm.
Let's move to Milton in the Badger South. Maybe to me, the team that's going to get maybe the highest grade. I'm going to give them an A. They're off to a 4-1 start, 3-0 in conference, atop the conference standings. I saw them play once. Just a super tough team. I know that Fort Atkinson hadn't won a game when they went in there last week, but it's a rivalry game, and they found a way to win that one too.
Can't give them an A. I mean,
not going there yet?
An A for me is undefeated, and the Red Hawks lost to Wanakee, obviously a great program, but still, you know, to earn an A in my book, you've got a
tough grader.
Yeah, I am a tough grader.
Okay.
You know, I go back to Mr. Smith back in 7th grade. He was a tough grader too. But you know, you look at what they've got going, and certainly they're headed in the right direction. A big game this week was Stoughton. We had talked coming over here. Stoughton better than their 2-3 record. You know, a team that lost to Wanakee, lost to Reedsburg, and lost to unbeaten Mount Horeb Barneveld. So don't let that record deceive you. Milton's going to have their hands full, and really offensively, the Red Hawks having trouble getting on track, and defensively with Russell Leary again, the defense has kept them in games, but offensively the Red Hawks got to get a little bit more balanced and really got to get a little bit more diversified if they want to have success in the postseason.
Give me a grade on Parker, a team that's now got 2 wins. They got to 2-3 now. Yeah, they've probably beaten the teams they should have, but they, you know, a nice little road win last week. C somewhere in there?
I would say a C. I mean, that's fair.
Got to get the ball going through the air a little bit.
With what they have left on their schedule, I mean, that could drop to a D, but it certainly could go to a B. I mean, you know, I think the playoff side of the picture for the Vikings, just because they've got such a tough remaining schedule, but doesn't mean they can't, you know, make life tough for their opponents and be competitive in every game. And I think when you look at it, starting with LaFollette this week, Khalil Copas plays. Obviously, it's a tougher task if he doesn't play. you know, that game is winnable for the Vikings, because I saw La Follette last week, and they struggled a little bit without their playmaker on the field. And if they don't have him this week, a chance for Parker to go in there and at least make a game of it and try to give yourselves a chance at the end of the game to have a chance to win.
On the other side of town, Janesville Craig, I'm thinking like a B+ with maybe just a note home to mom saying like the tougher lessons are coming up here.
Yep. Maybe on the chalkboard, right, you know, I will not blow a game late when we got a chance to put the other team away on the 3-yard line. And that's this Cougars season right there. They should be 5-0 in the playoffs, and first and goal at the 3-yard line late in the game last week against La Follette and couldn't finish. And then the defense that had played well all game suddenly just couldn't stop the run, and the Lancers just pounded it down their throats, 97 yards. And, you know, that was the difference right now between Craig being in the playoffs, knowing your future, to now with what they have left on the schedule. It's a tough run for them. You've got Sun Prairie, you got Middleton, you got West, and you got Memorial, you know, 4 tough opponents. And the Cougars, like I say, they've got to still find a way to win one game to get themselves into the playoffs.
That's kind of what we thought going into the year, though. They'd have to win one of these Final Four probably to get there. Unfortunate they couldn't get to 5-0 and exceed some of the early expectations. So.
Yep.
Rock Valley North. Big rivalry game. Evansville, Albany, and Edgerton playing this week. Let's start with Edgerton. Obviously, big expectations with Ricky Williams coming back. He's had the numbers, that's for sure. They need to find some help for him. What kind of
well, I think their biggest problem right now is defensively. They can't stop anybody. You know, McFarland, a long drive last week that turned out to be the game winner. And, you know, Ricky, because Edgerton's so quick strike, and because Ricky is so capable of scoring on any play, that's great because you get on the board. But if you turn around and let the other team do the same thing, you know, it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So Edgerton's got to find a way defensively to get some stops so that the offense can use Ricky and run ball control and run some clock. And, you know, that's got to start this week with Evansville, because let's face it, the loser of this game is looking at having to win 2 of their last 3 games to make the playoffs. And, you know, that's a lot easier said than done.
Let's give both. I'll probably give both teams in that matchup a C+, and one's going to move to a B with a win, and one's going to move to a solid C with a low with a loss, and then got to kind of see where they go from here. Who do you got in this game?
I like Edgerton. They're at home. They snapped an 11-game losing streak to the Blue Devils last year, and let's face it, these two schools don't like each other. You can say what you want and say that's bad sportsmanship or whatever, but these two schools don't like each other. Not a lot of love between the two, and they're going to get after it. And it's a heated, spirited rivalry that makes for an entertaining game. And I just think offensively, with Williams, you know, back to 100% or close to it, that Edgerton's got too much firepower for the Blue Devils. But the Blue Devils, let's face it, 2-3 and could easily be 4-1.
Yeah, I think they might actually get a win. I think they're going to be angry coming off last week. I got a chance to see them there, and they really should have won that game against Jefferson. And too many turnovers in the second half, or they would have gotten it done. And talking to the Jefferson coaching staff afterward is maybe why I think they can maybe stop or limit Williams just a little bit, because he said they're the only team that they've really seen on film so far this year that play different players on offensive line and defensive line.
Right.
So they're not playing both ways like a lot of the teams
and that makes a difference, especially in the second half. But again, if you're trying to compare taking nothing away from Garrett Blaskey, an outstanding running back, all-conference kid, but Ricky Williams is in a different league. You try to stop him and gear up for him, and you can look on film and think you've got things down, but Ricky, all he needs is a little crease, and he's bye-bye, and you can't compare the two, and I just think Williams is a difference maker.
Let's move south real quick. Start with Bigfoot, a team that I think has played really well, especially, obviously they have the expectations with the winning streak and things like that, but wasn't so sure exactly how things were going to go, and they find a way to get a win over Jefferson. I'm giving them a B+ at this stage.
Oh, definitely. And I think if you had to hand out a Coach of the Year award right now, Greg Enns gets it hands down. I mean, for the job he's done with, obviously, yeah, a great Bigfoot program that's had so much success, but let's face it, they lost a ton of talent to graduation. Rodney took his coaching background and what he's done for that program. He took that to Beloit Memorial, so he was kind of starting over bare and not knowing what he got into. And you know, they're off to a 4-1 start, unbeaten. The conference winning streak's at 50. And hats off to Greg Enns and hats off to those kids at Bigfoot for keeping it rolling in what a lot of people thought would maybe be a rebuilding year.
Yeah. And here, big game down here this week. Broadhead Judah is the last team in our area that's undefeated, but haven't been tested really too much since maybe that opening week.
That second week against Evansville with the Hail Mary.
Yep. And they might get a little test here this week. Clinton coming to town, kind of thought maybe they would be the little darling, and I'm not sure that they've quite reached their potential yet. Yep. I would give them maybe like a B-, and probably I would have to give Broadhead an A to this point. But they haven't, you know, I would send that note home and say, all right, you got some lessons here.
And again, in a program where we're talking about homework, I probably haven't done enough of mine. But I don't know the last time Clinton, really for that matter, Palmyra or Parkview has beaten one of the big two.
Yeah.
You look at Bigfoot, and you look at Broadhead Judah, and it's been years since, you know, they've been able to beat one of the so-called big two in the conference in the Rock Valley South. So a tall task for Clinton. I just think
have some weapons.
They do. I just think Broadhead Judah up front is just too big and too strong, and they're likely to just pound on them and pound on them. And again, if you're playing both ways by that third, fourth quarter with Logan Maurer and Reeve Lincoln and the rest of those kids that Broadhead, you know, has up front, I just think Broadhead Judah has too much toughness and too much strength up front they're just going to wear down the Cougars. But, you know, we've seen weirder things happen, so to speak, so who knows?
When you got playmakers on offense, you never know what could happen, and Derek Severson certainly that, kind of setting all kinds of records for the Cougars, and bringing over some of his basketball friends as receivers, Mark Olszewski, Zach Kaminsky, and they've got some playmakers, so it could be interesting.
And that's what they're going to have to do. They can't get into a ground game control. You know, they've got to hope to get some big plays and maybe win the special teams and maybe win the field possession, so to speak. But that's their best chance of winning is the big plays and to hopefully maybe cause a turnover or two.
That's your first half report card here on Prep Spotlight. We will talk about maybe some of the players that we've liked so far maybe next week.
Sure.
And you know, follow us on Friday night. Bear will be over here. I'll be checking out Craig at Some Prayer. You can follow us on Twitter, and we'll have all the games, stories, and stats up as fast as we can online at GazetteExtra.com.
Take care, everybody. See you next week.